Good evening, friends. Welcome back to the next edition. In the last presentation, I did talk about the very world of stylistics, and we try to understand how stylistics attempts the study of a work of art in the pretext of language. Today we are going to have one more interesting topic that falls under the fabric of stylistics. We're going to understand what makes a particular work of art an art. What makes a poem a poem? What makes a novel a novel? One of the important things about stylistics, which all stylisticians have argued, that the authors make use of the special language. The very notion of special language is open to different connotations. What does exactly the special use of language mean? How can we differentiate this special use of language from other usages of languages in the given different situations? How can we draw a line between the ordinary language and language of literature? So this is the topic that we are going to address in this presentation. We try to understand how the literariness of literature emerges from language, the special use of language, and how it is different from the ordinary language. In the given context, we all have understood that linguistics is a branch that takes into account all the paraphernalia, and linguistics as a broad umbrella term. It takes into account the speech aspect, the word aspect, the meaning aspect, the social aspect, the communication aspect, and language that occurs in various situations, in various domains, which we have addressed in sociolinguistics. So sociolinguistically they are called registers. So registers are the varieties of language as per the use, and the language of law, the language of journalism, the language of science, the language of management, the language of communication, the language of literature, they differ from each other in many ways. And analyzing this particular thing, we are two experts. One, we have a literary critic, and the other is the linguist. So literary critics radically differs from a linguist. No doubt, both of them, they undertake a relatively minute study of the text. Both seek to describe and explain linguistic communication, but there is a slight difference. The linguist approach, or his perspective, is broad and unspecialized, whereas the critics is more particular and specialized. What makes a special language? It is said that the poetic language, that is the language employed by the poets writing a poem, it violates or deviates. It deviates from the normal norms of the prescriptions of language. It deviates from the standard norms of language usage, and intentionally the prescriptive rules of language are broken in order to make use of Longinus term, longine, the sublimity. So the poetic language is a special use of language. It intentionally violates, deviates from the standard prescriptions, and the poets enjoy the poetic license. So this is the term that has been used by Thomas Rhymer, according to whom poetic license is a liberty the poets enjoy themselves in order to create the special effect, the emotive effect. And this particular feature of the use of language are often occurred in our day-to-day situations, during our conversations in informal situations. Many of us make use of trope, metaphor, irony, fun. So as for this, we cannot have a sharp distinction between the ordinary language and the language of literature. There is no any firm dividing line. It is based on the assumption. It is based on the acceptance. In the pretext of stylistics, the notion of dialects also plays an important role. In sociolinguistics, we have understood that dialects are the regional varieties of language. As we all know that language is a social phenomenon, and the study of language cannot be complete without taking into account its social context. So everybody who makes use of the language brings something to the language, adds flair to the language. And that's why we have a different varieties of language in the written context, in the spoken context as well. So among all of the different factors that contribute to the emergence of dialects, the locale, the geography, it plays a significant role. So dialects are the regional varieties of language. When we think about English, when we think about Marathi, when we think about Hindi, when we think about Kannada, so all these languages that we know, that we identify, they are just the constructs, they are just the labels. What we have in reality are the different varieties of those languages being spoken in different situations. In case of English, we have n number of varieties of English. Even in England, even in Great Britain, we have different varieties of English being spoken there. English in England, it has so many different varieties such as Welsh, Southampton, and globally we have the regional varieties of English such as African English, Caribbean English, Indian English, French English, and so on and so forth. So there are so many different factors that are responsible for bringing in this variation in the language. The factors comprises of class, the upper middle class, the upper class, the middle class, the lower class. So the people representing all these classes do not have a common way of using the language. They have their own respective ways through which their economic class is represented. The economic status, culture. So among these factors, one of the varieties of language, one of the varieties of languages particularly, that enjoys a privilege, which is what we call a privileged dialect. It is often known as standard language. What is the standard language then? In case of English, we say it is British English, it is American English. In case of Marathi, it is Puneri Marathi. In case of Hindi, it is UP Hindi. So all these languages which are or which enjoy the privilege of being standard. But when the notion of standard language comes to our mind, naturally it opens up new vistas of inquiry. Among all other varieties, standard language itself is a variety. It is the variety of the language that every writer, every professional tries to adhere to. It cuts the regional, national boundaries, and it emerges as the global language. And because of its frequent usages, it is extensively used by most number of people at most number of places. But for a variety to become a standard language requires some processes. It undergoes some processes. And only after going through the processes, 4 processes, a particular variety acquires the status of the standard language. The first is selection. Second, it is codification. Third, it is elaboration of function. And the fourth, the acceptance. So these are the 4 stages that every variety undergoes to achieve the status of a standard language. Pertaining to the first stage called selection, there is a very important, this is a very important step. In case of the multilingual nation like India, it is very complex. So when we are to select one from the many, naturally gives us many problems. One has to think about applying certain criteria. On what basis a variety has to be selected? In case of America, in case of most of the European countries, such problem didn't arise. It arises in the multilingual state like India. So when we have a huge number of languages being spoken, I would like to give one example. We became independent in the year 1947, and immediately after that,